Today's subject, as you see, are many selves. Uh, why it is said that being a single entity, as we seem to be, human being, why it is said that our many selves? It is very interesting actually. Although it seems to be one single unit, a human being, it is very interesting when we delve a little bit deeper to see that we are multi-persons, as Sri Aurobindo says. In fact, as we know, yoga is union with the divine, and this union is effected of the individual soul with the universal soul, that is the divine. So that we all know, and it entails, the process entails, there are so many methods actually which is taken into account, like your some postures which we normally in Indian context we call asanas, then breathing exercises which are called pranayama, and meditation, dhyan, and all this. So all these things are generally associated with the process of yoga. But what is Sri Aurobindo saying? That is very interesting to note. He says that yoga is nothing but practical psychology. Practical psychology. And when we put the knowledge of practical psychology into practice in our daily life, that truly culminates in yoga, and that leads to merger with the divine of our being. But that is the normal yoga, system of yoga. But Sri Aurobindo's yoga, as we know, which is called integral yoga, it is a radical transformation of human nature, of human consciousness. That means our outer nature, which is so very complex, that has to undergo a total change. Not only change, it is called the transformation. That's why, because it has to, the whole nature has to be uplifted from the lower strata to the divine level of consciousness. So, for this to happen, such a radical change of consciousness to take place in human nature, it is very difficult, because as it is the earth consciousness which is enmeshed with the universal nature itself, it is very difficult, and this earthly consciousness always put obstacles, or it is rather we can say that it goes on its own way. And the moment one goes, wants to go beyond this process of universal nature, the universal nature becomes very cautious and does not let someone go beyond it. Only before one is prepared. That is, the nature, universal nature puts so many obstacles. In fact, these obstacles are tests. However, so if we have to abide by what Sri Aurobindo says, and if we truly want that a life divine on earth, which he has a vision, clear vision. If we have to put ourselves on this tremulous path, which is integral yoga, even before that, what we'll have to do, we'll have to become conscious individuals. We'll have to know, first we'll have to know ourselves, how we are formed. Is it a single entity, what I call myself? If it is so, then how come that at this particular moment I talk so sweetly, the next moment when someone rebukes me, I also retaliate and all these things. The next moment I'm a different man altogether. And that means our nature is very, very unpredictable, and we do not know even what moves us from behind. All the time it has been happening in our life, daily life. We do not know that so many contradicting, conflicting thoughts, movements, actions take place in us. Within us, it's ourselves. Leave alone others. So until and unless we know about our own being, how we are formed, it is next to impossible to step into the path of this integral yoga. So today we'll be trying to delve a little deeper, only if time permits, because as you said, I do not know how much we can continue. But in any case, even before going a little bit deeper, first I wish to read a few passages which are very, very important. And these will clear a lot of our doubts also, and we can dwell upon these things. He says, Sri Aurobindo says, the practice of yoga brings us face to face with the extraordinary complexity of our own being, the stimulating but also embarrassing multiplicity of our personality, the rich, endless confusion of nature. To the ordinary man who lives upon his own waking surface, ignorant of the self's depths and vastnesses behind the veil, his psychological existence is fairly simple. A small but clamorous company of desires, some imperative intellectual and aesthetic cravings, some tastes, a few ruling or prominent ideas amid a great current of unconnected or ill-connected and mostly trivial thoughts, a number of more or less imperative vital needs, alterations of physical health and disease, a scattered and inconsequent succession of joys and griefs, frequent minor disturbances and vicissitudes, and rarer strong searchings and upheavals of mind or body, and through it all, nature, partly with the aid of his thought and will, partly without or in spite of it, arranging these things in some rough practical fashion, some tolerable disorderly order. This is the material of his existence. You see, what ordinarily we human beings are. We always move in a groove, in a set pattern, so to say. We always move in a set pattern of our thoughts, of our movements, of our actions, because this is what we have seen, this is what we have acquired from our forefathers, or whatever we have been seeing in our day-to-day context, life. So we go through this these are all very imperative things, because you see, this is what we know. We have to first, we are preoccupied with our basic needs, food, shelter and all. Then slowly we move a little further, graduate ourselves to acquiring some vital fulfillment. Then after that we go a step further, actualize our needs. That means we are slowly moving closer. I mean, it is some kind of a narrowing down upwards, actualizing our needs. So all our vital needs are slowly then fading away. Then we go towards what we call moral notions of ourselves. So then we are moving on to the mental regions, and so on and so forth. We are slowly moving upwards. But then all these things, because we are on this earth, all these things are coming from the universal nature. But we do not know how these are affecting us. All the time, day in and day out, we are in correspondence with the universal nature. And we do not know how all those forces which are at work in the universe are penetrating us, into our beings. There are so many levels of our beings. We will be, if we go a little deeper, then only we will be able to know. So what's, again I'll go back to a passage of Sri Aurobindo, where he says very emphatically that as being with a capital B, that is, he is meaning here the divine being, the macrocosm, the whole, that is the divine spirit. As being is one yet multiple means although he is one and he has got this triple poise of Satchidananda in the unmanifested, from there he also extends himself to become many in the whole universe, creates the universe. As we see, there are so many worlds in this universe. So he, in the process, he becomes multiple. Likewise, he says, as being is one yet multiple, so also the same law prevails in ourselves and our members. In our own being also, we have so many members in our being. The spirit, the Purusha, is one, but it adapts itself to the formations of nature. Deep down the spirit is there, but the spirit being very deep down, first there are other layers. To reach the spirit, we'll have to penetrate all these layers through which we'll have to go. How, we will see now. Over each grade of our being, a power of the spirit presides. We have within us and discover, when we go deep enough inwards, a mind self, a life self, a physical self. That is what he calls mind self, is the mental being. As we know, we have three domains in our whole being. First is the mental being, then the vital being, which he calls a life self, and finally the physical self. There is a being of mind, a mental Purusha, expressing something of itself on our surface in the thoughts, perceptions, activities of our mind nature. A being of life which expresses something of itself in the impulses, feelings, sensations, desires, external life activities of our vital nature. A physical being, that is the physical, the third domain, a being of the body which expresses something of itself in the instincts, habits, formulated activities of our physical nature. So these beings or part selves of the self in us are powers of the spirit, and therefore not limited by their temporary expression. For what is thus formulated is only a fragment of its possibilities. Now what we see, what we understand by this is all these powers of these beings, that is the mental being, the vital being, and the physical being, these powers, they derive only from within, that is the true self, the spirit, the presence of the divine. But the expression creates a temporary mental, vital, or physical personality which grows and develops even as the psychic being or soul personality grows and develops within us. Each has its own distinct nature, its influence, its action on the whole of us. But on our surface, all these influences and all this action, as they come up, mingle and create an aggregate surface being. So, what we see is our whole being, all these beings, different beings, they derive the power from the self or the spirit only. And all these are an amalgamation. All these beings are amalgamation in one single being. But the true being remains deep inside. Now, until and unless we penetrate through the layers, outer layers, now we have seen or understood only these three domains which he has named mental, vital, and physical being. Now, after that, when we go a little deeper, then we will see that even behind this outer selves, there are inner being, then inmost being, and behind it, at the core of it, is the psychic being. So, first, we have to understand that what we are formed of, what we see in the frontal appearance is only an amalgamation of all these beings. And it is also very interesting to see what the mother says on this. Because her language is very simple, I believe she will straight away let us understand very clearly. If we have not understood Sri Aurobindo's words, or if it is a little bit complex, we will understand much better this time. She says, if you have the philosophic mind, you will ask yourself, what do I call myself? Is it my body? It changes all the time. It is never the same thing. Is it my feelings? They change so often. Is it my thoughts? They are built and destroyed continuously. That is not myself. Where is the self then? What is it that gives me this sense of continuity? That I remain on earth and I do this and that and go through a lot of experiences, but truly do not know what I am formed of. Again, she says, if you continue sincerely, you go back a few years, the problem becomes more and more perplexing. You continue to observe. You tell yourself, it is my memory. But even if one loses one's memory, one would be oneself. If someone's memory is also, if we take it that it is the memory that remains in us, Then if the memory goes, for example, if someone becomes a kind of a lunatic person, he loses his memory, then even he exists, isn't it? Now, she says, if one sincerely continues this profound search, there comes a moment when everything disappears and one single thing exists. What is that? That is the divine presence. Everything disappears, dissolves, everything melts away like butter in the sunlight. When one has made this discovery, one becomes aware that one was nothing but a bundle of habits. She puts it in very simple terms. We are full of bundles of habits which are formed through so many avenues. It is always that which does not know the divine and is not conscious of the divine which speaks. In everyone there are these hundreds and hundreds of selves who speak, and in hundreds of completely different ways. Selves unconscious, changing, fluid. This moment I am doing something, the next moment I am a different person doing something else, having different attitudes altogether, completely opposite to the one I was having a few minutes back. So how can we say that it is one single me? There are so many me's. So many me's contradicting each one. I remember, of course, it's long time back I used to listen to music very much, and there was a Swedish group called ABBA, and they had brought up an album. It's called Me and I. It's a very beautiful wordings, gloomy mood and inspiration. We are funny combinations, me and I. You see, all these things percolate down from whatever we think it comes to our mind are not ours fully. It's something that comes from higher ups in tits and beats. We cannot, as it is, we cannot receive and retain whatever is coming from the divine through different channels. Of course, these are not filtered. We can get the filtered perception of things only when we are one and attuned with our psychic being. So, again, coming back to her own thing, she says, the self which speaks today is not the same as yesterday's. And if you look further, the self has disappeared. There is only one who remains. That is the divine. It is the only one that may be seen always the same. It does not vacillate. Otherwise, all our beings vacillate, all our thoughts, our movements, our actions, whatever. This moment it is something, next moment it is something else. And people around us also see all these things, observe these things, but do not get a clue and take it as something which is universal. Oh, it is like this only, we'll have to go by that. How can we expect to change our nature? But it is not true. There is a way also of changing our nature, the outer nature, and it is through this route of integrality, integral path, which Sri Aurobindo and the Mother have shown us. Now, what I was talking about these different levels of our being. It is very, very interesting. Let's see how much we can go. From the viewpoint of Sri Aurobindo's thought, the human being is inseparably one with the universal being. That means with the divine being. We are not out of divine. Nothing is out of divine as it is. And he says that there are two systems simultaneously active in the organization of the being and its parts. There is a concentric system and the other is a vertical system. Now first we will discuss about the concentric system. The concentric system is like a series of rings or sheets consisting of, we called these beings, as we said, mental, vital and physical. Now we will find out something else also. The frontal being, that is actually, it is echoing, isn't it? Are you getting me right? Sorry?
It's okay.
Okay, let's continue then. But I'm finding my voice is ricocheting. Anyway, I'll continue. So, in the concentric system, it's like a series of sheets. The first one is outer being, consisting of outer mental, outer vital, and outer physical. And behind these, there is the inner being, which again consists of inner mental, inner vital, and inner physical. I think something is wrong.
Echo is.
Yes. Something else. What to do? Should we stop here and continue some other day? What do you suggest? Are you getting me? Are you getting me, please?
Please, everybody switch off their system. That internet will be audible.
Are you getting me, please? I'm getting all these sounds echoed. Can you hear me?
Yes. Snigdha, please switch off your voice.
Even my voice is equal. Anyway, I think we should conclude our session today.
It is now clear. Snigdha ma'am has switched off your voice. So you can continue now. Now you are very clear.
You are getting me clear now?
Yes, you are clear. You can please continue.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Sir.
Let's continue now. So, we were talking about this concentric system. First, we found that there is the outer being. In this outer being, there is a outer mental, there is the outer vital, and there is also an outer physical. And behind this outer being, there is the inner being, which again has inner mental, inner vital, and inner physical. Till now, we have found two layers or two sheets. So these two layers together is called the phenomenal being. Phenomenal being. And now there is another behind this inner being. There is the inmost being, which again has inmost mental, inmost vital, and inmost physical. And at the core of all these layers, what it is the soul or the psychic being. Now you see how we are formed actually. So what we call the phenomenal being, that is comprising of the outer mental, outer vital, and outer physical, and also the inner vital, inner mental, inner physical. This is called the the phenomenal being or the instrumental being. These two layers are in sync with the universal nature, connected to universal nature, and only behind this there is this inmost sheath, which is called the inmost mental, which comprises of inmost mental, inmost vital, and inmost physical. And behind these, at the core, is the psychic. Now you see how many layers we'll have to penetrate before reaching the psychic. So this is basically called the concentric system, and the other system which he mentions is called the vertical system, and it is like a staircase, which most of us know actually. Still I'll just mention it. At the bottom of it starts the inconscient. Just above it is the subconscient. Then above it is the physical, the vital, the mind, the higher mind, illumined mind, intuition, overmind, and up to this level it is called the parardha, and beyond it, that is supermind and Satchidananda, is called aparardha. So this is the vertical system. It starts right from inconscient level, inconscient plane of consciousness, and going up right up to supermind and Satchidananda. And these are basically the main parts and planes of our being as described by Sri Aurobindo. And if we wish to go a little bit deeper, then we can discuss all these, the outer being, the inner being, which is also called the subliminal, and finally the inmost, that is the psychic being. I believe these we can take up in our next session, and how these sheets or our being correspond with the universal nature, and all these influences come into us through which layer, which is called the circumconscient or the environmental consciousness. We will discuss all these in our next session, which will also include the psychic being. Can you conclude now?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank
If someone has any question, please. Okay, then we'll conclude.